I had the opportunity to interview his squad leader or squadron leader at when he went to Delta Force,
Yeah.
and that guy told me, I'm telling you this because I think that you'll appreciate it. He said one of the things that always fascinated him about Josh Wheeler was when they'd go into the kill house and do
Yeah.
like the CQB training, he just would constantly be laughing. Like he'd be
Yeah.
running these drills and
Oh
he'd be
yeah.
laughing his ass off while
Oh yeah.
blowing things away. And his former squadron leader said, he's like, I hope that when he died, he was smiling because that's how he would have wanted it. And he was a large, this is his squadron leader said, Josh Wheeler was a larger than life figure in an organization where everyone is a
Yeah.
larger than life figure. He was elevated above virtually all of them. So I really appreciate you taking some time to remember. Josh, do you remember where you were when you heard that he'd been killed?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Um, I was in Fort Hunter Liggett. I was a first sergeant in Charlie Company, 275, and we were doing validation exercises before deployment. And so we were doing a brief, and so the brief, as we were getting ready to, go out and do the first series of, targets and stuff like that, all our phones are outside, on the security point and everything. So we do the brief, and I come up, and it was one of my guys actually at the security point. He goes, "Hey, first sergeant, your phone's been blowing up," and I'm like, "Oh shit, okay, great." I'm like, I don't have that many guys on rear D. Like, god dang it, like what the hell's going on? So I like pick up my phone, and I see I have multiple missed calls from guys in the unit. I'm like, oh shit, like I know where this, because you just know like there's a reason behind that. So I call Chris Frost, who's a great friend of mine, great buddy of mine, that I've known forever. So I call him back, and all I said was who, and he goes Josh, and you know I instantly went, which one, because I do know quite a few Joshes, and he goes Josh Wheeler, and I don't quite frankly know what I said. I don't even know if I hung up the phone with him. I can't quite remember. Because I mean, we've all lost friends. We've all lost, people important to us, especially in this profession. But, just like that squadron commander, talked about, there's people that are larger than life, and then there's people that are a cut above. Well, for Josh, and for many of us, there was Josh dying was not possible. Like, there's no way Josh could die. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound like ignorant. I don't want to sound like childish, because I mean, that's the reality of the work that we do. But we really, really felt that way, because I've seen Josh like almost die, like numerous times. Like, there's no way that Josh could die. And, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again, and I'm not sure if I'm totally, you probably just asked one question, but I'll go into it if you don't mind. Is I instantly went into, okay, I got to let other people know. So I started making phone calls. I started telling people, hey, Josh is dead. I don't know much. All this different kind of stuff. And the last call that I made was to somebody I've already referenced before, Sergio Chiparez, and it just all kind of finally just like caught up with me in that moment. And when I called Sergio, I couldn't talk. Like I was crying, like, and I was, and again, I don't know. I mean, he told me like you got it out, but because I've talked to him since, but he's like, I was worried. Like he's like, I was devastated just like you were, but I was worried because I've never seen you like that. Um, and the next 2 days, man, I'll tell you, and it was very, very bad time to not be in your element, not to not be functional, but I was not functional as a first sergeant, because we're going through a training exercise, and good thing is I had phenomenal platoon sergeants and a company commander that I'll love to the day I die. John Stahaley, Lieutenant Colonel John Stahaley, is currently a 191 commander over in Graf, Germany. They covered for me pretty much. And finally, I went and I talked to the chaplain, and it was the start of me working through shit that I hadn't worked through, in a long time, going all the way back to my childhood. And so bringing this, this kind of, to a head right here is I like to think that in Josh's death, he saved my life one last time. Because had I not done that, I don't know where I would be. I was a pretty messed up individual. Like I had packed away years, decades of trauma and issues and everything else. And I finally got like help, and I finally did the things that I needed to do to work through those problems and to come to terms with a lot of things. But it took that. And it sucks that it took that. Quite frankly, I wish Josh was still with us, and life would have went the way it went for me. I would give anything to be able to call Josh right now. And I think about that fucking daily. I would love to be able to talk to him, even if it's just some random, email that I would get from him when he was traveling the world, talking about, his escapades up in Norway or whatever it was, and I say that because that was like the last email exchange we had was he was up in Norway. So, which was a couple months prior to that. So,
Well,
yeah.
I think on behalf of not just the viewers, but the country, I think it's important people realize that Joshua Wheeler exists. They are more than willing to pay the price, sacrifice that they do. And this country is better off for it. And if people don't know his story, I can't encourage you enough to Google it, read about it wherever you can, watch interviews like this one, because Josh Wheeler was a great American, and we're not going to forget him no matter how many years go by. So I cannot thank you enough. And we're going to get into a lot of things you just mentioned, but I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to really shine a light on the legacy of Joshua Wheeler. Next, I want to pivot because you did kind of touch on Afghanistan, but really I want to get into Iraq with you. So do you go right away in the invasion in 2003?
Yeah. So we came back from the Afghanistan deployment, and then, very rapidly started gearing up, and I didn't know it at the time, but we were actually training. We were doing stuff in preparation for Iraq, probably within like 4 months of getting back from the Afghanistan deployment. Because we were preparing, and yes, we actually were the first element on the ground in RR, which was a staging area prior to going to Iraq. And it was my platoon and all of ACO that actually went. So it was 4 platoons. And, that would be cool, like to say we were the first ones there, but literally all we did for 3 weeks was put up tents. Like, I'm not talking like a few tents, like hundreds of tents. I mean, we literally were doing competitions to put up tents, like the GP mediums. I mean, because they ended up putting up thousands of them. We were there before the D-cell guys. We were there before like any of the structural engineers. I mean, there was literally no one there. It was an open desert.
And so you're there for 3 weeks, you're setting up tents. At what point does your platoon, like you said, the rest of A company, at what point do you guys start pushing in?